much does it hurt the WNBA when Caitlin Clark is out?
It is devastating to the WNBA when Caitlin Clark is out.
What happens when one player holds the weight of an entire league on her shoulders, then suddenly disappears? That's the nightmare the WNBA is living through right now. Caitlin Clark, the rookie who transformed women's basketball overnight, is sidelined with injury, and the impact has been devastating. We're not talking about a small dip in ratings. We're talking about a full-blown collapse. Viewership, ticket sales, sponsorships, everything is crumbling without her. For the first time, we're seeing the true fragility of a league that pinned all its hopes on one superstar. And the numbers tell a story so shocking, it almost feels unreal. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, it wasn't just a rookie debut. It was an earthquake. Overnight, Indiana Fever games turned into the hottest ticket in sports. Demand was so overwhelming that arenas had to be upgraded just to handle the crowds. Games were selling out weeks in advance. Corporate sponsors who had ignored the league for decades suddenly wanted in, and they wanted Clark at the center of their campaigns. Television numbers went from modest to record-shattering. Clark's first few nationally televised games drew over 2 million viewers, numbers the WNBA had never seen before. To put that in perspective, those audiences rivaled regular season NBA broadcasts.
Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire WNBA to be down. And this tweet from Christine Brennan really stuck out to me. She said, "One player gets injured and more than half the TV audience for the entire league disappears. Has any other athlete ever had that kind of impact on a sport? Golf without Tiger definitely dropped precipitously on occasion."
Suddenly, casual sports fans, people who had never watched a women's game in their life, were tuning in just to see Clark. It wasn't just hype, it was real economic power. She was pulling in nearly 27% of the league's entire financial activity. Merchandising, ticket sales, viewership, social media buzz, everything pointed back to her. Analysts compared her influence to Tiger Woods in golf. But with one major difference, Woods boosted an already global sport. Clark was reviving a league that had been on life support. The WNBA was finally trending, and it all traced back to one 22-year-old rookie. But here's the thing about building your empire on one person. If that person falls, the whole structure comes down with them. And that's exactly what happened. On May 24th, Caitlin Clark was sidelined with a quad injury. At first, fans thought it was a minor setback. Maybe she'd miss a game or two. But the impact was immediate. And it was brutal. Nationally televised WNBA viewership cratered by more than 55%. That's not a typo. That's more than half the audience gone the moment she left the court. The Fever's games, which had been pulling nearly 1.8 million viewers, dropped to fewer than 850,000. And it wasn't just her team, it was the entire league. Across the board, average viewership slumped back down to pre-Clark levels, around 55,000. To make matters worse, that number is actually lower than the 2023 average, meaning the league has erased nearly all of its progress. Ticket prices told the same sad story. Seats that had been reselling for $800 or more suddenly fell to $200 or less.
And the truth is the truth, and the data is there. And what we saw when Caitlin was out the last time, the 5 games that she missed earlier in the season, the WNBA's viewership dropped more than 50%. Not just the Fever, but the entire league.
In some cases, the average ticket price for Clark's missed games plummeted from over $13. Imagine paying luxury car prices for courtside Fever seats in May, only to see them worth pennies by June. The message was loud and clear. Fans weren't buying tickets for the WNBA. They were buying tickets for Caitlin Clark. And it didn't stop there. Those highly anticipated event games, the ones moved to bigger arenas specifically to meet Clark's demand, suddenly looked half-empty without her. Even marquee matchups, like the Chicago Sky rematch that once drew over 2.2 million viewers, couldn't keep momentum. With Clark sidelined, it was just another game. The buzz evaporated. This isn't just a bad break, it's an existential crisis. When one injury causes a 55% drop in viewership league-wide, what does that say about the foundation of the sport? The WNBA wasn't just riding Clark's wave, it was completely dependent on it, and now with her stuck on the sidelines, the cracks in the league's fragile empire are exposed for the world to see. But here's the crazy part. The disaster wasn't just about her absence, it was about the way the league handled it. And that's where the controversy really begins. Here's the part that's hardest to swallow. Caitlyn didn't just get hurt. She got targeted, over and over again. The cheap shots didn't come out of nowhere. They became a pattern. Hard screens with no warning.
What the Indiana Fever, that is what Caitlyn need to avoid the best that they possibly can. So if it means that Caitlyn is out for 3 weeks, if it means that she is out all the way through All-Star, then
Blindsides at full speed. Hits sold as just physical basketball. And the moment anyone called it out, the chorus kicked in. Relax. That's the game. Except it wasn't the game when the audience doubled. It wasn't the game when families bought tickets just to see one player light up the gym. It became the game when the league looked the other way. Veteran reporters noticed it. Christine Brennan flat out said the quiet part out loud. The WNBA was failing to meet the moment. Fans noticed too. You could see it in the comments, the call-in shows, the live chats. People weren't just mad at the fouls. They were mad at a system that let it slide. That anger didn't vanish when the buzzer sounded. It followed the league into the next broadcast, the next boycott, the next empty section in the upper bowl. The ugly truth is that Clark became a no-win target. If she pushed back, she was attacked for being soft or dramatic. If she didn't react, she was labeled passive or exposed. Every angle was a trap because the league never drew a line, so opponents kept testing how far they could go. Night after night, while the cameras rolled and the league's best shot at long-term relevancy twisted in the wind. Think about the signal that sends. Not to the diehards, they'll always be there, but to the millions of new curious viewers who finally gave the W a chance. They saw a league that welcomed their money, then shrugged when the one player they came to watch got hammered. They saw officiating that changed from game to game. They saw physicality morph into risk and no one at the top willing to say, enough. And the strangest part, this wasn't some complicated policy puzzle. Other leagues solved this years ago. If a star is getting hunted, refs whistle it early and often. Suspensions drop, fines stick. The league protects the show because the show pays everybody.
Went down. The WNBA ratings have dropped over 55% across the board.
Hey, guess what, guys?
The league is Caitlyn Clark.
The league is Caitlyn Clark. She is the WNBA, guys.
Sidelined with a left quad strain May 24th. National TV viewership has plunged since then 55%. Before the injury, the Fever, her team, were averaging 1.81 million viewers, almost 2 million. Since her injury, fewer than 850.
That's not favoritism. That's stewardship. You safeguard the investment, so the whole ecosystem thrives. Players, coaches, owners, fans. When you don't, you get exactly what came next. But the most brutal proof didn't show up in press conferences or highlight reels. It showed up in the bank accounts. The numbers didn't whisper. They screamed. When Caitlyn sat, the money fell through the floor. Tickets that had been going for VIP prices suddenly sold for what you'd pay for a weeknight movie. Resellers who'd bet on Clark Mania started unloading inventory like it was melting in their hands. You could watch the market in real time. $860 seats tumbling to a couple hundred. Can't miss matchups dipping under $100. Team shops bloated with merch that only moved when the number 22 jerseys were in the building. And it wasn't just tickets. It was everything attached to the moment. Concession stands stopped buzzing. Parking lots weren't full an hour before tip. The line for the selfie wall wasn't around the corner. Corporate partners don't need spreadsheets to feel that shift. They sense it the moment the arena stops vibrating. When the atmosphere goes flat, the ROI math goes cold. Meetings get rescheduled. Sponsorship renewals become let's revisit next quarter. Campaigns that were built around Clark in every market morph into hedged media buys and contingent deliverables. Broadcasters felt it too. The league's hot streak on national windows cooled the second she was in street cloaked. Program directors, who had just begun carving out friendlier slots and heavier promo, suddenly had to explain to their bosses why the same product performed like a completely different show. Because it was a different show without her. The casual viewer, the person who moves ratings from good to historic, never adopted the league wholesale. They adopted her and watched the league because she was there. Even the teams that reshaped schedules to chase the surge paid a price. Bigger arenas booked, extra staff scheduled, promo budgets spent, all calibrated for Clark, and then she wasn't there. Those nights didn't become disasters, but they stopped being events. That's a massive difference. You can patch a disaster. You can't manufacture magic. This is where the stakes get grown up. The league was already staring at an operating loss. Clark's arrival didn't erase that problem. It paused it. Her absence pressed play again. Fast forward, actually. Lower viewership doesn't just bruise pride. It hits the next TV negotiation. Softer crowds don't just look bad on camera. They weigh down revenue projections. Owners use when they decide salaries, travel standards, and marketing investment. That trickles directly into the CBA. If the pie looks smaller, the slices get tighter. That's not theory. That's how every league's bargaining table works. The harshest indicator is loyalty, or the lack of it. The new audience wasn't league loyal yet. They were Clark loyal. That's not an insult. It's how fandom starts. The job of a league is to turn that spark into something durable. Come for the star, stay for the sport. But to do that, you need stability, fairness, and a product that feels protected, not precarious. Without that, the casuals fade and the skeptics feel vindicated. And here's the kicker. This didn't have to become a slow-motion cash leak. A clear protection standard for star players would have helped sustain the surge. Consistency at the whistle would have reassured the new audience. Transparent discipline for out-of-bounds hits would have shown that the league values its showpiece. As more than a marketing line, those are levers a front office can pull anytime. The longer you avoid them, the more expensive the avoidance becomes. So where does that leave the W right now? With a choice, either admit that the business depends on its headliners and build guardrails that keep them healthy and visible, or pretend that any attention is good attention and keep rolling the dice with the one storyline that actually moved the needle. One path grows the league. The other path cashes in moments and writes IOUs for the future. But this free fall isn't only financial, it's reputational. And once trust breaks, it's the hardest currency to earn back. If money falling out of the sky wasn't bad enough, the WNBA has another problem: credibility. Fans aren't just turning off the TV because Caitlyn isn't playing. They're turning it off because they don't trust the product anymore. And once fans stop believing the competition is fair, the game loses more than ratings. It loses its soul. Think about it. Sports leagues thrive on one thing: authenticity. The NBA protects LeBron. The NFL protects Mahomes. MLB protects its marquee pitchers. Not because those stars are untouchable, but because the league understands that casual fans tune in to watch the best play at their best. No one is paying to see a quarterback intentionally injured or a slugger beamed every night. That's not competition. That's sabotage. Now compare that with the WNBA. Caitlyn Clark gets blindsided, shoved, tripped, and hacked, night after night. Instead of whistles and suspensions, the league waves it off as just physical basketball. To the casual fan, that doesn't look tough. It looks reckless. It looks like a league gambling away its only momentum on playground grudges. Christine Brennan said it bluntly: the WNBA is failing to meet the moment. And fans agreed. Many weren't just disappointed, they were angry. Some even boycotted the league outright, refusing to watch games without Clark as a protest against how she's treated. That's not normal fan behavior. That's not "we're mad at the refs." That's "we're done with the product until you fix this." And here's the scary part. This perception of chaos sticks. It becomes part of the brand. Instead of being seen as a rising professional league, the WNBA starts looking like a high school drama club that can't protect its headliner. That's brutal because once sponsors, networks, and fans slap that label on you, they don't forget. Remember, the WNBA had the chance to use Clark's star power to elevate everyone. Aja Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Angel Reese, Kelsey Plum, they could have turned her spotlight into a floodlight. Instead, they let jealousy and hard fouls define the story. And the story fans are walking away with isn't "wow, the WNBA is growing." It's "wow, the WNBA can't handle success." And the timing for that kind of reputation hit couldn't be worse, because the league is marching toward its most important negotiation in years. At the end of this season, the WNBA enters collective bargaining negotiations. On paper, this should have been the moment of triumph. Clark's arrival brought in record-breaking audiences, sold-out arenas, and massive sponsor interest. With momentum like that, players could have demanded better salaries, better travel, and more investment across the board. This was the best shot in decades to lift the whole league financially. But thanks to Clark's injuries and the league's refusal to protect her, the leverage is gone. You can already imagine what the owners are going to say when players push for bigger contracts. Why should we commit more money when the entire league collapses the second one? Rookie isn't on the court, and they won't be wrong. The numbers, the 55% ratings crash, the 70% ticket price drop, the half-empty arenas are devastating evidence. That means instead of negotiating from strength, the players' union will be on defense. Every demand will be met with the same response. What happens if Clark gets hurt again? What happens if she misses a season? Why invest in growth that depends on one player staying healthy? It's a nightmare scenario because it undercuts the very progress Clark helped spark. And here's the worst part. This isn't just about 2025. The CBA sets the tone for years. If this negotiation falls flat, the players may be stuck with stagnating salaries until the end of the decade. In other words, the league may have squandered its best window for growth in a generation because it couldn't protect the one player who made that window possible. Other leagues dream about moments like this when a transcendent star arrives and transforms everything. The WNBA actually got that miracle, and instead of locking it down, they let it spiral into injuries, boycotts, and financial freefall. Now, instead of walking into negotiations with their heads held high, players and agents will be walking in with excuses and damage control. The message to investors, to sponsors, and to fans is chilling. The WNBA is a house of cards, and if Caitlin Clark sneezes, the whole thing comes crashing down. But here's the truly tragic twist. None of this had to happen, because Clark wasn't just a ratings juggernaut. She was the perfect opportunity to build a sustainable future. This is the part that hurts the most. Because it didn't have to end like this. Caitlin Clark was a once-in-a-generation gift, and the WNBA fumbled. From the moment she stepped onto the court, Clark showed humility and poise. She didn't act like a diva. She praised her teammates, deflected credit, and carried herself with maturity well beyond her years. She was exactly the kind of star you could build a league around. Not just talented but likable, marketable, and relatable. She had the skill to dominate highlights, but the personality to keep the spotlight from feeling forced. The league had one job: protect her and expand the stage. Instead, they turned her into a target. Instead of turning her popularity into a rising tide that lifted all players, they let envy and pettiness drag the narrative into chaos. Instead of building sustainable storylines around rivalries, dynasties, and balanced competition, they let one player carry the entire burden. What they should have done is obvious. They should have put systems in place so Clark wasn't overexposed to hard fouls. They should have used her spotlight to shine on others. Aja Wilson's dominance, Breanna Stewart's leadership, Kelsey Plum's firepower. They could have taken advantage of the influx of new fans and taught them the larger landscape of the WNBA. Instead, the league bet everything on Clark surviving every hit and carrying every narrative. And now, the cracks are showing. Fans don't just see the injuries, they see the wasted potential. They see a league that talks about growth but acts like it's afraid of it. They see an organization that could have written the playbook for women's sports history, but chose short-term drama over long-term stability. It's like building a house with gold bricks but forgetting to pour the foundation. The shine is incredible, until the first storm hits, then the whole thing topples. That's what the WNBA is living through now. The storm it should have prepared for. And here's the chilling thought. What happens if this storm lasts longer than anyone expects? Let's face it, Caitlin Clark isn't just the face of the WNBA. She is the WNBA. Without her, the league doesn't just dip, it collapses. That's the lesson the numbers make crystal clear. A 55% drop in ratings. Ticket prices gutted. Merch sales stalled. Sponsorships hesitating. National buzz gone. Those aren't normal fluctuations. Those are free falls. That's not the sign of a league with strong legs. That's the sign of a league standing on stilts, praying they don't snap. And the most tragic part? It was entirely avoidable. If the league had protected Clark the way other leagues protect their stars, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If they had diversified their marketing push instead of putting all the weight on her shoulders, they'd still have momentum. If they had turned her spotlight into an ecosystem instead of a single flame, they'd have a league prepared for adversity. Instead, what we're left with is the harsh reminder of what the WNBA was before Clark. Empty stadiums, modest ratings, and endless maybe next year promises. That's the nightmare staring them in the face now. Sponsors who jumped in for Clark are asking themselves hard questions. Broadcasters who gave the league primetime windows are second-guessing. Fans who finally tuned in are clicking away, and the league is left clinging to a player they failed to protect, hoping she'll come back before the whole system caves in. The truth is brutal, but undeniable. Caitlin Clark isn't just an athlete. She's the WNBA's lifeline. Without her, the league isn't just weaker, it's exposed. Exposed as fragile. Exposed as short-sighted. Exposed as unprepared for the one thing they should have seen coming all along. What happens when the star that carries you can't carry you anymore? So here's the big question. Will the WNBA finally learn? Will they put aside petty grudges, jealous fouls, and inconsistent officiating long enough to build real safeguards around their biggest draw? Or will they keep rolling the dice pretending that just basketball excuses are enough until Clark burns out and the league loses the only opportunity it's had in decades to break into the mainstream? Because one thing's for sure, this isn't about one rookie anymore. This is about the survival of the WNBA itself. And unless something changes fast, the league may look back on Caitlin Clark's first season, not as the dawn of a new era, but as the peak they'll never reach again.